The deep hum of the ship's engines was the only sound accompanying their footsteps as Barron and Isabel moved quickly down the deserted hallway. The tension in the air was palpable. Isabel let out a shaky breath, her voice low but urgent. "Barron, what just happened? Why would he come after you like that?" "I don't know," Barron replied, his voice steady, though his jaw was tense. It felt personal, though. He wasn't just venting. He's holding on to something. Isabel frowned. Maybe he's just unstable or drunk. Either way, this doesn't feel safe. Barron glanced around the empty corridor, his eyes narrowing as he mulled over her words. "It's more than that. Did you hear what he said about my family? This isn't random." Isabel hesitated, her brow furrowed with concern. "Do you think he believes one of those conspiracy theories? You know, the ones they spread online about your family?" Barron's expression darkened. "It wouldn't be the first time," he said bitterly. He paused, his gaze distant. "But this felt different. He seemed certain, like he has some kind of personal grudge." When they reached their suite, Barron swiped his keycard and pushed the door open, holding it for Isabel. Once inside, the familiar luxury of their cabin did little to ease the tension. Isabel perched on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "What are you going to do?" she asked quietly. Barron leaned against the wall, crossing his arms as he considered his options. "If I report him, this whole thing becomes a headline. Barron confronts unhinged captain. It'll spiral out of control, and no one will care about what really happened." "So, you're just going to do nothing?" Isabel asked, tilting her head. "No," Barron said firmly. "But I need to figure out what he's holding on to. If this is about me or my family, I can't just ignore it." Isabel stood, closing the distance between them. "You're not going to confront him, are you? That man is dangerous, Barron. You saw how he acted tonight." "I'm not going to do anything reckless," Barron assured her. "But if he comes at me again, I'm going to handle it. I'm not going to let him keep this ship in chaos just because he has a chip on his shoulder." Isabel sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "I just don't want you to get hurt. This was supposed to be our escape, remember?" Barron placed a hand on her cheek, his expression softening. "No. And I'm not going to let him ruin it for us. Whatever this is, I'll make sure it doesn't go any further." Long after Isabel had fallen asleep, Barron lay awake, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. Captain Hargrove's words replayed in his mind, each accusation cutting deeper than he wanted to admit. He had spent his entire life under the weight of his family's name, bearing the brunt of both admiration and animosity. But this was different. Hargrove's anger wasn't fueled by idle gossip or baseless rumors. It carried a sharp, deliberate edge that hinted at something deeper. By the time dawn broke, Barron had made up his mind. He couldn't wait for Hargrove to make the next move. Whatever the captain's motivations, Barron needed answers before the situation spiraled further out of control. Later that morning, during a meeting with the ship's head of security, the first pieces of the puzzle began to emerge. The officer's tone was measured as he explained, "We've reviewed some of the security footage from last night. It's concerning. There's evidence that Captain Hargrove's actions weren't entirely impulsive." Barron leaned forward in his chair, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" The officer hesitated, glancing at Isabel before continuing. "He was watching you throughout the day, on the promenade, at the garden bistro, even during the gala. Before he entered the ballroom, he spent time in his quarters pacing and muttering to himself. He was clearly agitated." "Agitated about what?" Isabel asked, her voice tight. "We're still looking into it," the officer admitted. But there's something else. He's been corresponding with someone, a journalist. We haven't seen the full extent of their communication yet, but it seems like he's been planning to leak information about your family. Barron's jaw clenched, though his voice remained steady. So this wasn't just a drunken outburst. He was targeting me. The officer nodded. That's how it appears. Based on his behavior, we're recommending that you avoid further contact with him for the remainder of the voyage. But Barron shook his head, his resolve hardening. Whoa. If he's holding on to something, I need to know what it is. I'll talk to him myself. Isabel's eyes widened. Barron, you can't be serious. After last night. I'm not afraid of him, Barron said firmly. If he has something to say, I want to hear it. And I want to make it clear that I'm not going to be intimidated. The officer hesitated but eventually nodded. If you're sure about this, I'll arrange for you to meet him in a controlled environment. But I strongly advise caution. Barron nodded, his expression resolute. I'll handle it.